And we are live. Hello, my comic book collectors. This is Chris, and this is my channel. We love comics. Thank you, as always, for taking the time to listen to what I have to say. And this is a surprise little live chat, so I'm not sure if anybody will see it or even know because I didn't give anybody notice, but that's okay, even if it doesn't happen. Because I wanted to talk a little bit more about the grading companies. Because there's a lot of people out there that base their information on what the masses tend to say. Now, there's nothing ever wrong with getting somebody's opinion, but the best places to get opinions are usually, especially when it comes to products, the best place to get opinions is from people who actually experienced working with that company or companies. People that base their information on what they've heard tends to be the normal thing, but is not a reliable source. So what I would recommend to any consumer for any product, it is always to your best interest to research a product before you buy it. Get as much information as you can, but try and get information from people who have actually purchased the product or dealt with the company or had some kind of a personal experience. If you base your own information on rumors or what they call in law hearsay, well then you could get what they call biased information from people who have brand loyalty who may be against another company for whatever reason. And I'm seeing people starting to come in. I made the live show so your live chats will be seen. So if you want your name to be seen, please leave a comment and just keep them civil because we want to have a constructive conversation here. And I want to talk about one of the biggest things when it comes to PGX. And it's funny because I talk about them a lot. People are going to think I'm some spokesperson or something. I'm just want to say right off the bat, I love all three companies. I've used CGC, I've used CBCS, and I've used PGX. So my basis is my own personal experience. And Vincenzo says, have you cracked open your PGX books to check them? I have not cracked open any of my books because then it kind of defeats the purpose of spending money to have them graded. So no, I haven't done that, and I will never do that. The reason I grade my books, now each person's experience is going to be different, but the reason I grade my books is, one, I want to try and have the best ability to know if something has been altered in any way. Now, every company has either gotten it spot on, and every company at times has missed things or two. This is not exclusive to any one company. But overall, I put my confidence in all three companies. Now, that can vary. I also mainly do it to protect my comic, because a comic that's encased is going to be a lot more protected than one that could be in just one little flimsy bag and board. So most people get their books graded because it gets them more value. Now, one of the things I've seen in the comic book community is a lot of people, or some people, I'll leave that up to you on who those people or individuals or groups are, they're always talking about the love of comics, how people should just read them and enjoy them, which is perfectly fine. But then, if that is the case, it should not matter who grades your comic, because if you are saying on one hand, you should only collect comics for the love and the reading of them, but yet you'll only use, for example, CGC because it will get you the best return value, well, then you're contradicting yourself. So me personally, and I can only share my own personal experience, when I get books graded, I do it for, one, to protect them, two, to make sure that they are not altered in any way, and you can't always guarantee that because, remember, there is human error involved. And last but not least, if it increases the value, that's great. Now, here's one of the biggest drawbacks, like, for example, because I'm going to use mainly CGC and CBCS, but, I'm sorry, CGC and PGX. But one thing before I do, I want to mention, because a couple of people mentioned this, and I thank them for this. They said that CBCS does have in-house pressing. Well, the funny part is, I actually went to their website, and they have no mention of their pressing services. So even if they did have it, you know, it's kind of hard for people to use it if they don't know it's available. So I want to thank the subscribers. There were like 2 or 3 people that actually mentioned it, but nowhere on their main website does it even say any price or the fact that they even do it. So that's really not a good way to advertise your thing, because I'm sure a lot of people would utilize that service, especially if it is in-house, which CGC has a pressing service, but they don't do it in-house, which means they have to mail those comics to another location, which could increase the chances of books getting damaged. So whether CBCS has it in-house or not, I don't know. Their website doesn't say, but I do know for a fact that PGX does. Now, getting into one of the main factors of why people prefer CGC over, for example, PGX. Because it's very popular for people to base things on rumors. Now, one of the rumors was, for the PGX, was somebody made a video about a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle first print. And they supposedly opened it up to find out, lo and behold, they switched it with the third print. Now, that video was taken down. And from my conversations with PGX Company, they said that it was a fraudulent video, and they were actually going to sue them for slander. I don't know if it's slander or the other word that they use, because you could see, I saw that video before it was taken down, and you could see a couple of times when they opened it, the camera would move away, which means it could have been edited. Now, if you made a video exposing a fraud, well, you would want to keep that video up. But if you were making a false accusation that could damage a company and you got sued, it would be rather silly to keep that evidence up, because you would get yourself in a lot of trouble. So it was actually be libel, not slander. Or, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know. It's either libel or slander, but basically, if that video was not truthful, that could damage a company's reputation, and that company could turn around and sue them for basically deceiving people in order to ruin the reputation of a business. So, the fact that it was taken down should suggest that that video was most likely not accurate. Or, to play devil's advocate, PGX could have paid them off. Now, I don't know either way, but I'm going to play devil's advocate. So, one of 2 conclusions could have come from them taking that video down. Either one, they were caught putting a fake profile up, a fake video up, and they could have gotten sued big time for either slander or libel, again, I don't know which one, or somebody paid them off and tried to let it, you know, fade into the distance. Those are pretty much the only 2 possibilities. So, what the truth is, sometimes we'll never know. But the problem is, people base a lot of things not on what they research, but what they hear, or what is popular. And I'll show you proof of how the masses really don't know all the time what they speak of. Because if you remember, only a few short centuries ago, the world was convinced that the world was flat. To the point where if you said the earth was round, they would throw you in jail or have you executed. And people would mock you for saying that the world was round. But yet, the masses all were told by the church that the world was flat, so they believed it. So just because a large amount of people say things does not necessarily mean, or has to be, that it's truthful. So always keep that in mind. Now, it's never bad to hear experiences from people, but hear it from people who actually involve themselves with a product or a company. Not people that say, well, I heard this, or this rumor may or may be not true, because why would you want to spend your life basing things on what somebody may or may not have said or may not have done? Go with people's personal experiences. Now, when it comes to grading companies, they do not have robots and machines that will scan the comic, see every little minor detail, and have a specific, perfect grading of every comic. There is human error involved. I have seen people that made CBCS, CGC, and PGX videos where they were either completely happy with a grade or completely unhappy with a grade. There was a book I had that was Amazing Spider-Man 194, which is the first appearance of the Black Cat. I got that when I was a kid, when I was getting all my high-grade books. I sent it to CGC. It came back a 4.5. There were, for a black cover, there were maybe one or two little, spinal creases with color breaks. Nothing major. But that should have been a 6.0 in my opinion. So every company makes mistakes. You can look at videos all the time. Another misconception I hear all the time from what people hear is they say, well, PGX is grading unfairly. Well, if you actually watch video evidence, I've seen several videos where people would crack open a PGX comic and send it to CGC or CBCS, and the grade would come back exactly the same or within a half point up or down. Now, being fair, I've also seen videos where people would crack open a CGC book and send it back to CGC, and the grade would come back different. So you're going to have different people, different situations. They could be tired, they could be frustrated, they could be overly zealous, because remember, CGC is popular for what reason? Because you can get a lot of money for your comic. Now, a business makes money on that fact. They want brand loyalty, which means they want you to give all of your money to them and not their competition. That's what brand loyalty is all about. It's all about tricking the public into, instead of purchasing what's best for them, spending their money on a specific brand, regardless if it's good or bad, regardless if it's increasing in value or decreasing in value. It's a way to trick people into giving their money to make their company better, which means companies like CGC, they're going to make sure that your books are more valuable, because then you will spend your money with them. Now, I want to show you something that most people don't think about, because if you only think about a part of an equation, you never get the full, truthful answer. Now, one of the biggest things that people say, like I said, with CGC over, for example, PGX, because those are the two extremes. CBCS is kind of like, if CGC was 1, CBCS would be 1A. So I'm going to basically talk between CGC and PGX. Everybody says, well, from what I hear, that a CGC book will sell much better than a PGX book, which is true, but they only see the ending factor. And I'm going to show you what most of them either miss, don't realize, or refuse to talk about. Because not only will you sell a CG book for more, you will also pay for a CGC book more. So it factors in the end. Give you an example, a hypothetical example. Let's say I bought 2 of the same graded book. I won't mention which book because it doesn't really matter. It's not relevant. But any generic book, CGC graded it an 8.0, and I bought the same one from PGX, graded at an 8.0. Now, you will pay more for the CGC book. So let's say I paid $500 for that book, the 8.0 book from CGC. And then the PGX book, which always sells for less, I paid $300. So I paid $200 less for that book. So let's say I hold on to it for a year or two and decide, you know what, I feel like selling both of these books. Now, like everybody says, the CGC book will sell higher. So let's say from my original $500 investment, now that book is worth and sells for $1,000. The PGX book only sells for $800 because, like people say, CGC will get more. But you know what? I made the same profit because even though there was a $200 difference in the sale of that item, I saved $200 on the purchase of the item. So this is where people mislead you, because if they only show you the end result, which is, look, the CGC version of that comic sold for 1,000, but the PGX version only sold for 800, then you'll think, wow, I got to get the CGC all the time because I could make more money. But yet you don't see the beginning where you bought the CGC book for higher and paid less for the PGX book. So you see how the factors stay the same? So people can always doctor numbers to meet their brand loyalty factor. And that is not being honest. And that is one thing about my channel when it comes to these things, is number one, I am not going to have brand loyalty. I love either Duracell or Energizer. I love PlayStation or Xbox. I love Marvel or DC. And I will use CGC, I will use CBCS, and I will use PGX. And I don't base it on what some people in a gang-like mentality feel, that because they have brand loyalty for whatever reason, feel that they need to press their feelings on someone else by either not lying. Well, then again, not telling the truth is the same as lying. So if you look at it from a business aspect, and I have owned my own 2 businesses since 2001, if you are going to talk about profits, you have to see the whole picture. You have to know the net, you have to know the gross, you have to know how much you paid for advertising, because that's a factor, how much you pay for employees, because that's a factor. So that's why, like, for example, when I show my comics and I show the price, I always include the shipping and handling, because the shipping and handling will affect how much you paid for that book. So if you bought a book for $100 and you paid $20 in shipping because it came overseas or from Canada, you didn't pay $100 for the book. You paid $120 for the book. So you can say I spent $100, but then that's being misleading. And unfortunately, some people out there would rather have views than have integrity. So they will only show you the part of the equation that most people don't think about. So yes, a CGC book will sell for higher than a PGX book, but you will buy the PGX book cheaper than you will the CGC book, so it evens out. I made the same profit on both books, even though the CGC sold higher. It's because the CGC book sold for higher means I had the same profit, even though the PGX looks like I made less money. So if I bought the CGC at 8.0 and sold it for 500, I'm sorry, bought it for 500 and sold it for 1,000, that's a $500 profit. If I had a PGX book that I only bought for 300 and I can only sell it for 800, I still made a $500 profit. So there's other factors. And let's say, for example, the time constraints, because we all know if you have dealt with any of these grading companies, especially CGC and CBCS, they say they have a 20 to 30 business day turnaround. Now remember, business day is Monday through Friday, also does not include holidays. So that will factor in if there is an official holiday like Martin Luther King Day or 4th of July, something like that. So they are nowhere near what they say their return dates are, unless you want to spend a lot more money. So let's say you have the hottest book of the month that's going to fade out really quick. Well, if I have a book that, for example, PGX can guarantee will return in 20 days, I could sell it for a lot more than a book that you have to wait 4 to 5 months on, unless, again, you spend more money. It all evens out in the end. So you can be misled by groups of what I like to call elitist bullies who, whatever it is, whether it's video games, whether it's Bitcoin versus gold and silver, whether it's Democrat versus Republican, Coke versus Pepsi. Well, let's get rid of the government part, because that's not brand loyalty. You're not spending money. But brand loyalty is a sucker's bet, because it's either, is it good or is it bad? And that's why, for example, like the Star Wars movies, I have been one of the biggest Star Wars fans since 1977 when I saw the original Star Wars in the movie theaters. I've seen opening day every single movie up until The Last Jedi. I saw, yeah, the one before that, The Force Awakens, I saw opening day as well. But I saw the route that they were going. I saw how they were disrespecting the original cast of Star Wars. And I knew the next movie, The Last Jedi, they would kill Luke Skywalker. I mean, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it by now. But because of the fact that even though I loved Star Wars, after what they did with this last movie, and even the previous movie, I won't spend another dime with them again. So if you want to have brand loyalty, that's fine. But don't spend your money on something just because you love that brand or everybody else thinks it's cool or it's the in thing to do. Because if they are not giving you quality and they are still getting your money, there is no incentive to better the product. And we get not what we complain about, but what we pay for. So I saw, for example, The Last Jedi. Many people hated that movie. I mean, it was the first movie I actually was mad at. I've had movies I didn't like, but this movie made me angry to the point where I will not pay for another movie again. Now, when the next movie comes out, if I go and spend the money, then it doesn't matter what I complained about because businesses only care about the bottom line, how much money you give them. So they pretend to like you. They pretend to be interested because they want your brand loyalty. It is all about working people's emotions to use it against them for profit. So that's why if I have a comic, this is what I do. If it's a newer comic from 1975 and up, if I feel it's a key issue that I want to protect, if I feel it does not need a pressing or a dry cleaning, I will send it to CGC because I don't care how long it takes because I'm not trying to sell them. If it's a book that is from 1975 and up, that has a signature that needs to be verified, that does not need to be pressed or dry cleaned, I will send it to CBCS. Because CGC does not do signature verifications, and I don't want a green label return saying writing on the cover. That just, to me, is silly. If I have a book from 1978 down that needs a pressing and dry cleaning or a signature verification, I will use PGX because their return is faster, their prices are cheaper, and even though I might be able to sell it for less, I will have purchased it for less as well. So it all evens out. But I am not selling any of my comics anyway. I mean, I think I've sold, in my lifetime, I've probably sold a total of 20 comics. And it was always because I needed to pay some kind of bill. And I didn't do it because I was trying to flip books, which, by the way, is perfectly fine. I don't understand why some people use that word like it's like you're doing something illegal. You know, you can buy a TV and then 5 years later or 2 years later turn around and sell it. Why does anybody not have a problem with that? But for some reason, if you have a comic and you buy it to sell it, then there's something wrong with you. I never understood that concept. So here's the suggestion I want to make to anybody out there, especially new. If you want to go on some elitist groups of any community where they have such brand loyalty that they are blind to the fact that the product is not going in an upwards direction, you're more than welcome to follow those people. But if you want to waste your money just because you want to fit in with the quote-unquote popular groups and what they're doing, that's kind of silly. Be an independent person. Think for yourself. There's nothing wrong with researching things, even people you don't like, because sometimes not only can you learn what to do, but you can learn what not to do. But so many people are so afraid to stand up for themselves for fear that they might get ridiculed. And I think that was one of the things why it was so popular, and to this day it's still popular to rag on me and my channel, because people like to be in groups. And that's fine. They have the right to do and say whatever they want. but they don't have the right to make accusations and make stories. And that's why I think the whole grading companies, there are too much information going out based on what they hear and what they speculate, and not what is. My experiences with all three have been good. I've never really had any major problems other than the fact, like I said, one of my CGC books came back much lower than it deserved. But PGX, I've dealt with them 2 or 3 times. Their customer service is the best. Their turnaround time is pretty much spot on. Their grading seems to be pretty accurate. Of course, there's always going to be exceptions here and there. But I mean, if you think you're getting a 9.8 and you get back a 4.0, then yeah, that's something to say, wait a minute, something's not right. But if you thought a book was 9.8 and you got a 9.6, you might have missed something. Because remember, they have to grade the color of the pages, if there are any fingerprints on it, if the staples are rusty, if there is, on page 17, there is a little bend in the paper, these things will lower the grade. And if you ever look at most people that want to say a grade about their comic, they look at the front and back cover. I see it all the time. There's a lot more to grading than the front and back cover. So my channel is not about getting everything right. It's not saying you have to listen to what I say. It's trying to convince people to think for themselves and do not base things on brand loyalty and what you hear from people who have heard it from someone else. That's how reputations start. Now, if you've had a bad experience, your own personal experience you'd like to share, that is good and it's also helpful. But remember, it goes for all companies. I have seen plenty of people say they hate CGC and they will never use them again. I've seen the same for PGX. I've seen the same for CBCS. It goes with every single company. And brand loyalty only lasts until you get screwed once. Because you can have, for example, let's say you love Coke over Pepsi, and you've been drinking it for 50 years, and then one day you open up a can of Coke. It doesn't smell right, but you drink it anyway, and you get sick and get food poisoning. I guarantee you'll never buy another Coke again. So brand loyalty only works until they screw you at the point where you no longer want to use them anymore. So what I say is be fair with everyone. If you want to base things just on what you hear, you're going to miss out on things. And I use the best example of the price difference that people say all the time between CGC and CBC and PGX that no one else talks about. Yes, you're going to sell the CGC book for more, but you will also pay more for it. So in the long run, it evens out. But they don't want you to tell you that because it goes against their own personal agendas. And if that's the case, they are not using their integrity, and they're not being fair to you who is there for advice. And that's why I think some people appreciate mine. So make your own conclusions. And if you want to base it on rumors, you're more than welcome to. But it's not the best and most beneficial way for your product making decisions. And that's all I want to say. So I'm not going to make this video too long. The fact that it's almost a half hour is amazing in itself. But before I do, I just want to give a shout out to everybody that took the time to comment. We got Rag718, James Werner, forgive me if I say any of them wrong, Avid Collector 80, Batcave Comics, Wolvie Fans, CGC Fan, let's see, Louis Ebrins Marcano, All About Comics, Zombie Tramp Talk Show, love that name. Let's see, anybody else? Comic Lover Omega, Vincenzo C, and Dennis Eats. I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to check out my video. Check out my other videos about my honest reviews, because I don't use brand loyalty. I go based on if something is good or bad, because I can absolutely love a product, but if a company, but if they don't do the right thing, then they don't deserve our money. Otherwise, they're going to keep putting out mediocre products, knowing that you'll just buy it because they suckered you into this whole brand loyalty thing. So really quick, Michael LeVincenzo, and I know I totally screwed that up, so forgive me. I wanted to give a quick shout out. Check out this video from the beginning if you haven't. Think for yourselves. Don't be afraid to research. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and stay away from the bully mentality. It doesn't do anything beneficial to you, and it's not a way to learn about a product or an experience. So thanks for listening, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you check out my review that I did earlier today with an open mind. And don't forget, it's not you, it's not I, it's We Love Comics. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.